Welcome to You Brew Kombucha. This is your guide to carbonation. If you're looking to make sure that your homemade kombucha is nice and bubbly, make sure that you check out my second fermentation video first. If you're still having some trouble getting good carbonation in your homemade kombucha, here are some tips that might help you. First off, I want to describe what in my mind makes good carbonation. I want it to be nice and fizzy and effervescent right out of the bottle, straight out of the fridge. I don't want it to lose carbonation when it chills down, and I don't want it to be overcarbonated to the point where I make a huge mess every time I open a bottle. It should have a nice, good, bubbly mouthfeel, and it should have nice visible bubbles when I pour it or when I pop the top off the bottle. Not everyone is looking for carbonation, and some people like their kombucha to be more fizzy than others. But if you're like me and like your kombucha to be nice and fizzy, here are some tips that'll help you do that. The first tip is to make sure that before you bottle your kombucha, you stir your fermentation vessel a few times to make sure that you evenly distribute any yeast that might settle at the bottom of the vessel. Yeasts are a really important part of getting good carbonation, since they're going to be the ones eating up all the added sugar that you add through the fruit flavorings and turning it into carbon dioxide, which of course makes your drink nice and bubbly. So you want to make sure to give your brewing vessel a nice stir before you bottle to evenly distribute any yeast that might settle. My next tip is to use fresh fruit puree during the second fermentation or bottling process. I don't recommend using chopped up fruit pieces because that'll just make it harder for the yeasts to access the sugars that are in the fruit. If you do a little bit of the work for the yeasts and puree your fruit or juice it, then it's a lot easier for the yeasts to access that great sugar that's locked in the fruit. And the more sugar is in the bottle, the more fizzy it'll get. There are some home brewers out there that say that you should add 1 or 2 raisins into your bottles, or that you should even add some crushed up eggshells to your bottles. I personally don't do that because it just sounds a little bit weird, and I don't really think that the work is necessary when I'm able to get really good carbonation just using the fruit flavoring that I'm already using in the first place. My next tip to ensure really good carbonation all lies in the bottles. I have a whole other video dedicated to bottles and caps that walks you through the pros and cons of using different types of bottles and walks you through all the bottles that I use to make sure that I get great carbonation in my kombucha every single time. But in a nutshell, you want to make sure that you have a good quality bottle that can hold carbonation, make sure that it's food grade and not cheaply made, otherwise it might break on you, and make sure that you have a cap that can withstand that pressure. You also want to make sure that you're able to close your bottle nice and tight. A lot of the times, if your bottle isn't sealed up super tightly, it can actually loosen itself over the course of the second fermentation process, which releases air. And the more air is released from your bottle, the less carbonation will get trapped into the liquid. The main way I like to make sure that my bottles are nice and tight is to use these simple rubber grippers just to make sure that they have a nice tight seal every single time I bottle. One more thing you want to do when you're bottling is make sure that the top of the bottle is nice and dry before you put the cap on there. And of course, make sure that the cap is dry as well. And my last tip, and this one is going to be a bit controversial, is to not burp your bottles. I have a whole other video dedicated on burping and why I personally don't burp my bottles, but basically burping is when you open your bottles slightly to release some air or release some built up pressure that's in the bottle, and then you close it back up and let it continue its second fermentation process. I don't recommend burping because it's really counterintuitive if you want to build up that nice carbonation. If you have good quality bottles and bottles that can withstand good pressure, there's really no need to burp your bottles because it just releases that good carbonation that you want to keep in your liquid. So make sure you check out my video on burping for more details on that. I promise I will not burp, and it is not disgusting. Some people like to keg their kombucha, which is a great way to add carbonation if you don't want to bottle it. Using a keg or using something like a soda stream will basically force carbonation into your kombucha, so you don't need to go through the second fermentation process to get that carbonation. If you want to keg your kombucha, just go ahead and add your flavorings after the first fermentation stage, then add it to your keg, which will force carbonate your kombucha for you. I know there are some brewers out there that'll have tried all of these tips and they're still not able to get good carbonation. And to you, I'll say that sometimes it's SCOBY dependent. So depending on the unique makeup and the unique yeasts and bacteria that live in your particular SCOBY, you might have a SCOBY that's not particularly susceptible to building up good carbonation. Maybe it doesn't have enough yeasts, or maybe it doesn't have the right yeasts. So if you've done everything you can possibly think of to ensure good carbonation and you're still not getting that good bubbliness, you might want to consider getting a different SCOBY or finding a SCOBY from a friend who you know has really great carbonated kombucha and asking them for a SCOBY. So make sure that you check out the rest of the videos on my channel to find out more information on making great kombucha. And particularly, I really want to recommend that you check out my video on bottles and caps to find out more about the different types of bottles I use to make sure that I get great carbonation every single time. Happy brewing!